Our ancestors have been using metal objects for thousands of years, and metals have changed millions of lives. Metal has been used for everything from cooking pots and cutlery to weapons, money and, of course, jewellery. Have you ever wondered where all those objects went? It's a well-known fact that the landscape is constantly changing, and where a primitive village once stood, you might find a modern tower block or housing estate, or better still for metal detectorists, the land could be ploughed soil or grazing fields. Imagine a hobby that gives you a glimpse of how your ancestors once lived. Imagine a hobby that allows you to see what is hidden beneath the soil. Imagine a hobby that enables you to hold your own piece of history in your own hands. That's metal detecting. There are many facets to the hobby of metal detecting, not least of all the opportunity to enjoy the open air in all weathers, regular exercise, and the chance to mix with like-minded hobbyists on a social level. And the hobby is open to all members of the family, regardless of their age.
The main thing that attracts me to this hobby is the historical aspect, to stumble across something that somebody's dropped maybe 400 or 500 years ago and then put it out the soil. It makes you have a connection between now and then, and that's the thing that interests me most about the hobby.
Been detecting for 3 years. The way I actually came into the hobby was quite strange. I was holidaying in Wales for 2 weeks. First week weather-wise was fine. The second week, however, it forecast rain all week, and not wanting to go shopping every day with the wife and children, decided to explore other avenues. Went onto the internet, saw a metal detecting site, became interested, spent a little bit of money, bought my first detector, and spent a very happy week on the beach in the rain. Not a lot to show for my efforts, but it was enough to get me hooked. It looks like a hammered coin today. It's number 29 for the collection. It appears to be from Queen Mary's reign. Looks like a threepence.
I've been detecting for 30 years actually, on and off, and past 5 years or so as part of a club. It's just something we picked on some years ago as a pleasant hobby to get out. It's nice, enjoyable, you're in the fresh air, you get some exercise, you learn some historical information, you learn about farming, coinage, all sorts of items. Pleasant being out, mainly on a Sunday, but during the week as well. It's a hobby, of course, you can take at your own level, on an individual basis when you feel like it, or you can go out with a club week in, week out, or you can spend 7 days a week out if you want to.
It is a hobby that knows no boundaries in terms of age or class really. It's a hobby for all the family. There are rallies up and down the country where we do see families from children as young as 3 or 4 through to the grandparents. It's great fun for everybody really.
I've been detecting for 28 years. It's a joint hobby with the wife, it helps us get us out together. Really enjoy the hobby. We work closely with the fine liaison officer in the local museums, recording fines. The main part about the hobby is not going out looking for treasure. It's more for finding out the history and letting the future generations have the benefit of it. The fun is coming home and identifying with all the books and various items when you get home. Then go and record them to your local flow officers. And well, this is generally what the hobby is all about, not treasure hunting.
We belong to a club, so there's about Quaker Acres in Darlington, so we're always out every Sunday. But it's fantastic. It takes you away from the daily grind.
I don't smoke, I don't drink, and this is my hobby. I'm 67 and that's it.
That's right, and
Keeps me going.
Keeps us something to do on a Sunday afternoon.
I'll have a mate, he's 42 and he can't keep up with me.
If you are thinking about taking up metal detecting, then it may be a good idea to visit a specialist shop where you can try different machines and get expert advice.
So you're thinking about taking up the hobby of metal detecting. I presume you haven't read anything about detectors, or you don't know anything about detectors, which is probably the safest way of presuming anything at this stage. The first thing is you've made the right move coming to a detector shop such as this, because you have a vast array of machines to choose from, together with equipment, books, and all of the accessories you're ever likely to need. Most of which you probably won't need, but they're here for you to have a look at, and you can then make a judgment on whether they're needed or not. Or if you want to, you can always purchase mail order from our website or via telephone at a later date. Another advantage of coming to a detector shop such as this would be you can pick the machines up, you can feel them, you can see how they work, what they do, what they don't do, and decide yourself whether you need any particular model or any particular facility. As part of the demonstration process, we also offer to show people what is found with metal detectors, and this isn't just the good items that we all like to find, it also encompasses some of the rubbish that we find, so they fully appreciate exactly what there is there to be found. A lot of this we have on display in the showroom.
As far as machines go, horses for courses, I like to use my main lab because it's deep, but it's not so good on segregation of targets. Whereas some of the other machines, such as XP and White's, they're better at separating targets, but it's virtually what you prefer on the day.
There's a range of detectors available from around about £100 through to over £1,000 for a top of the range machine. The average beginner price for a first detector these days is around about £300. Basically, you will buy different characteristics, different features on the detector. The more you spend, the more advanced they get.
Here are a few pointers and detecting techniques from one of the country's leading experts.
Right, there's a whole range of detectors, and that can be a bit mind-boggling. It's a little bit like fishing with detecting. Are you going to like it? Are you going to enjoy it? Are you going to spend a lot of money to begin with and find out that you don't enjoy it? Myself, I would go for a cheaper model to begin with. Any machine on the market today is good. They will all work. They all have the same configuration. You've got the coil. On this one, you've got a readout with a control box. Very light, easy to handle. No problem with the weight. It swings very easily. You've just got the on-off power, and you have different modes. One is all metal, which will, as it says on the tin, it will find every single type of metal. Obviously you don't want to keep finding these nails, so you'll turn it into a different mode, which will be like coins and jewellery, which will actually cut out the metal. It's called discrimination. You then have a sensitivity button on this one, and with the higher levels of sensitivity, theoretically the deeper it goes. Certain conditions will not allow this. It's called mineralization, but we can come on to that at a later date. Now this is how technology has moved on. Look at the size of that. You can virtually lift it with your finger. This was produced around about 1992. I actually did a field test on this machine. The size of it, the weight, You've now got advanced technology with that. Everything has been compacted right the way down for ease of use. In its day, this was a good machine. In actual fact, I still rate this one to this day, but it is old-fashioned and it is complicated. And it's heavy and you have to stop. With those other machines of today, do they find any more? Let's just say that they make things a lot easier for you. By going from the simplicity of the Garrett, which is roughly about £150, you can then go to this new machine which I've been testing just recently, the Xterra 70. The amount of controls on this compared with that one, you have 11 altogether. For a newcomer, although it has a very good manual, this can be very, very confusing. And rather than leap in and try and drive a Ferrari, you're better off starting with a Ford Escort. You're going to get there quicker, believe me. Well, I see a lot of detectorists at the rallies, and they will actually have all the cable bunched around here. This carries the electric current. It is also copper. Your head will pick this up. It's all bunched around the bottom. It's causing an interference with the electromagnetic field, because the electromagnetic field doesn't just go underneath. You have a reciprocating one on top. This is why in the early days, when people were using steel tool caps, they were getting these false signals. I personally prefer to have the cable running up the shaft. The least the coil sees of this, the better. You'll hear people say, oh, I found a coin at 12 inches deep. So therefore the electromagnetic field goes a minimum of 12 inches deep. Come up here. If you've got the cable bunched around here and it's flapping around, I don't like to leave anything to chance. I want every odd has got to be in my favour. The same with weight. I like things hip mounted for ease of use. I can then just carry the spare cable in my hand. It's so light. If I have this on the stem and I detect for 8 hours a day, at the end of the day your arm is aching and you can't keep a constant level at all times when your arm is aching. It's as simple as that. You've got easy access, you haven't got to turn around and try and fiddle with the controls here. You can carry on detecting and you're just moving the controls as you go along. This is a straight shaft. A lot of people prefer these when they're having a larger coil. It's nice and light. It's not necessary on the machines with a smaller coil, but with this, having it here is very well balanced, easy to use. This is what you're looking for at the end of the day. You want to feel comfortable, you're going to enjoy it more. Right, the length of the sweep is very important for not missing the ground. If you have this really extended and you sweep, you'll actually sweep to there and then to there. Look at the gap you've actually missed with your detector. So although you're making a long sweep this way, you are actually missing a lot of ground. If you then set this up, so in actual fact the coil is nice and comfortable, and it's round about a foot or so in front of your leading foot. So then you do a 4-foot sweep and look at the amount of times I have then gone over the same area. But a common fault with detectors, you'll see them on quite a few on the rallies, is the angle of the coil head. It is actually an optical illusion. When you look down the stem, you think the coil is level at that angle. It does look dead level. The amount of people, all you have to do, push it like that, step it onto the floor, and then at all times keep that coil level. At all times. Ubiquitous cartridge top. That's your starter for 10. Fill the hose in. Always. Obviously it's not that at the back end there. It's at the front end. Now all I do, just grab a handful, rub it over, I've got it in that hand, transfer half of it, there you go. Things are looking up. This time we've got a button. Too many people become obsessed with this step thing. They'll go on a field, they're not finding. After about an hour or so, they're getting fed up. So what do? They stop, or turn that up. Stuff must be a lot deeper. It isn't. If you're not finding it at the correct settings, by altering the settings, you're actually gaining less depth. If you're not finding, it isn't there. Have confidence in your ability and your machine. Don't keep chopping and changing. Chop and change only when conditions dictate, not because you're not finding. You're actually wasting time. It's the beauty of their high frequency machines. It will find something as tiny as that with ease. When you've got the furrows, rather than going this way, you've got to keep altering the shape of the coil for the contours. Travel across it this way. You'll find it's a lot easier to walk, and you can cover the ground far easier. Just by following the contours, you try and come this way, and you can be all over the place. Normally it's advisable to keep the coil as close to the ground as possible. But if you're using a large coil and the ground is mineralised, when I say large coil, I'm talking 11 inches and upwards. If the ground is mineralised and it's wet like this, you'd be far better to actually hold the coil just slightly off the ground. If you could hear the sound, how bad it was, by lifting it off the ground like an inch or so, the sound really diminishes. This is mineralisation, and because the ground is so wet, it will also bring up the signal. That's a bad signal. It will also bring up the signal, but it also increases the effect of mineralisation.
So, are you ready to go? Itching to get started? Let's see exactly where you can detect. England has a wealth of beautiful countryside. Rolling hills surrounding tiny villages. Millions of acres of farmland and natural forests. England is also rich in history, and wherever you look you will see evidence of past eras. The land here is perfect for searching. Try detecting on old riverbanks and look for paths that lead to the local church. Search land close to castles, but stay away from the castle, of course. Man has been farming for thousands of years, and most farmland will reveal lost metal objects. Land that is now ploughed might hide old tracks and roads, perfect for casual losses and certainly worth searching. All you have to do is get permission from the landowner, and you're off. Metal detectorists have worked very hard for many years establishing a good relationship with landowners, and you will find, once you have a good relationship with local farmers, you will never be short of somewhere to detect. All you have to do is ask for permission, and if the first farmer says no, then simply ask another one. Most farmers won't have a problem with you on their land if you adopt the right approach.
You knock on the farm, it's a numbers game again. When you knock on a farm and the farmer says no, he's not saying no to you, but some people get offended by people saying no, and they get offended by the actual fact that they said no. It's not you they say no to, it's a metal detector. You'll never get offended, just go on to the next one, knock the next one, and the next one, it's a numbers game again. You knock 10 doors, 9 might say no, but you're going to get one out of it.
And your face got to fit on the day.
And your face has got to fit, and you've got to be in the right time of the year. It's not good knocking the door when it's in the middle of lambing, or the grass is growing, or the crops are in. They're going to say no anyway. You're going to go there now September when the grasses come in, and just tell them they can go detecting, and of course they've got stubble fields, set aside fields, and what difference to them to dig a hole, and they know that next week they'll plough it out anyway.
Before you begin metal detecting, you should always gain permission from the farmer or the landowner. And always show the farmer or landowner what you find. Okay. It's very important to include the farmer and landowner and show them anything that you may find.
That's a nice hobby. It gets you out and about, gets you off the golf.
Once you have permission to search a field, it's a good idea to walk the field first and look for telltale signs of habitation and use. You will soon learn how to read a field and the features surrounding it.
Well, I've just walked the field, just went through it for about 3 or 4 minutes, 5 minutes, and I brought off some medieval, right through to 19th, 20th century pottery, glass. We've got knives, you've definitely got habitation here. I've got oyster shells, cockle shells, and it's really worth a go. It's worthwhile doing this before you actually start detecting, to give you some idea of the areas as well you want to be doing it. although with them ploughing, that will get dragged about a bit, but you will find the concentration of areas. But this is saying, yes, go for it, instead of wasting your time. We've just come on this field, and I'm having a look round. Obviously you've got a dike here and a dike there. Now these are man-made, these are not natural. In the close vicinity you've got a church, and due to the north. You look at the field, if I go down, I'm looking for any slight rises, any different discoloration in the soil. This is the type of thing you're looking for. Obviously when you stand back up again and you're looking around, all these houses, they've all been modern. There's no sign of like footpaths or anything like this, or of a river. So it is really just these type of fields. Get out there, walk at first, and then suck it and see.
Before long you will have a growing collection of interesting and valuable finds, and one of the attractions of the hobby is identifying your finds. There are plenty of experts and fellow detectorists who will help you.
This medieval, I don't know who it is, it's hard to work out. Right. Probably Henry or Edward first.
You can have somebody look at it then.
I know how to identify them, it's just, I haven't got the time, that's it there.
Flint arrowheads, flint scrapers, late Neolithic, Saxon brooch.
I started as a metal detectorist myself some 20 odd years ago, and that evolved into a dealership where now I deal when I don't get time to metal detect. I've been responsible for publishing a price guide on artifacts, which is selling very well. This is the second edition. And I just enjoy every aspect of the metal detecting hobby. The most common and prolific find that is found by metal detectors are these crotal bells. This is an example of one here. This is an early one called the fish scale type. Most detectorists when they start will find one of these. Generally they get very excited, so they should, but they're very common and the monetary value is not so high as perhaps a spectacular item. Here we have a group of thimbles ranging from medieval through to post-medieval up to Victorian. The style of thimbles hasn't really changed over the centuries. The medieval ones are all hand punched, and when we get up to later periods, of course, they're machine made. But again, this is a very common find by metal detectorists. It's quite a nice item if you think about it. This is originally it was a mystery object. It's since been established that it's in fact Celtic iron age. Now there have been a series of these on a bar, and they are identified as flesh hooks. I mean, anybody into the Celtic mythology, etc., might be able to expand upon it. But it's a raven, in fact. And in Celtic mythology, the raven is significant.
Amongst my best finds that I've done in the last 28 years are gold nobles, quarter nobles, half nobles. Edward III, Henry V, Henry VI. Declared not treasure trove, and the farmer didn't want them returning. He was happy to have some homemade wine off me. That was his reward. Only the wife has come up last year with a beautiful coin, which is the Henry V quarter noble London Mint. This has come from the main area where most of our gold was found, and then she was lucky enough to find on the beach a magnificent half sovereign, George III. Now these are usually pitted by the seed work, the sand, stone, gravel and that, but this is absolutely mint.
Here we have an Anglo-Saxon silver strap end, not a very common find. nevertheless there have been quite a few found. They usually have zoomorphic design on them. Here we have a Celtic Iron Age razor. If you can just imagine, the Celts used to actually shave their whiskers and that with that. It's quite a rare find, that. This is a representative example of most detector finds. Anybody that does metal detecting will tell you that 95% of their finds are based on this kind of item.
I've done this for 35 years, but I've never found the gold head yet. My best coin I found a fortnight ago were 1696 William III sixpence.
This is a Bronze Age flat axe. I think it's dated around about 2200 BC, and it was found up in Cumbria, and recorded it at Preston Museum with the finds there. He's an officer there. So
I think it's a Henry VII sovereign penny, or a Henry VIII sovereign penny.
This was when she was coming, Queen Elizabeth I was coming to the end of her reign, and they didn't like her very much, and so what they did, they defaced the dies so that they couldn't see a full portrait of her face.
Yeah.
It might be one of them sovereign pennies.
That jet. Alright.
With so much land to go at, one thing is for sure: the more research you put into your sites, the more you are likely to find, and there are lots of tools to help you do just that.
For those people who want to take it a bit further and research their own sites, there's plenty of resources out there. Online there's internet forums, and experts can answer questions. There's also old maps online. Equally there's also old maps in the archives and so on, so you can go in and research.
Examine aerial photographs and look for hidden footpaths and settlements that have vanished. Telltale signs can be found as shadows and shaded areas within the crops. Your local library is as good a place as any to start.
I'll go on the internet, look at aerial photographs, see if I can see any marks in the ground or any signs that there's been life there before, or paths. I also study the history books, see if I can find old paths and bridle ways. What I also do is I look between churches, because people must have travelled from local churches between one church and another. There would have been a path. Even if it doesn't exist today, there could have been one in the past. So I tend to work between churches a lot.
I do a bit of research. What I try to do is I try to go to the local library, use the reference books in the local library, and also the internet, which is very helpful to try and find a little bit about the area, the history of the area.
Old maps, go on the internet, see if you can find out like if there's anything interesting, been in the area before, just general things like that.
Aerial photography at different times of year, on the same field maybe, that you can see circles where there's definitely been something there. There's supposed to be a lost village in the village I was brought up at, Thurcroft, near Rotherham. It's only a small mining village, but outside the village, close to Mortham, which is a very old village, there was supposed to be a lost village there, or what they call a lost village. And on one set of aerial photography I got, when I printed it out, I found a series of circles where they say in this field there was a lost village. So they could be roundhouses. They definitely could be roundhouses. They're the right size, they're all in a row, and what looks like paths.
Yeah, although England is littered with castles, all these are scheduled sites. You've got no chance of getting on here. But what you're looking for is evidence of past occupation. So where do you start? You can get the aerial photographs. You're looking for crop marks. In this part of Norfolk, during the Roman occupation, it was the tide was actually 5 foot higher. This place here, although it's inland now, was actually a port. It's bigger than the big port of King's Lynn back in medieval times. So if the tide was that high, a lot of ground was underwater. So you're looking for high spots. The Romans recognised this. South-facing hills near a stream. In actual fact, the Romans used to park themselves right by the waterside. But the Saxons, in actual fact, were one field back. They used to leave the first field as water meadows because the actual water table became higher. The Celts were even higher. They were on the high ground. They had to see the natural enemies. The same as this castle here is stuck right up on high, and you can see miles and miles around. Obviously, with a vantage point this high, this has been used. Although you've got the castle and it's Norman, this, in actual fact, was a Roman site. So you've had occupation throughout the ages. You're going to get the traffic coming through. You're going to have the churches. You're going to have commerce with a big place like this. The castle that size, that had to support the local economy. When I'm driving out in the car, I'm forever looking around at the fields. Well, obviously noticing whether the crops are coming off. You get the right light on a cornfield and you can actually see the crop marks at a certain time of day. Normally it's late afternoon. You get the crops off and I'm looking at the fields. You get a slope on a field. If you get a slight levelling out and then coming down again, chances are if I'm on that field, I will hit that area first. That's what I'm looking for. Indentations. When I get on the field, I'm looking for, well, I will be hearing nails. I'm looking for pottery. I'm looking for oyster shells. This is a sure sign of habitation. Once you've found this pottery and the naily areas, then you can go to town. Otherwise, really, it is potluck. You're going across a field, you don't know what's on there, and one field looks the same as another. It is very important that you do this field walking first. It saves, you think it might waste time, but it actually saves time in the long run.
If you are lucky enough to live by the sea, then you might be interested in beach detecting. Thousands of detectorists already search the beaches all over the country, some of them actually making a living out of it.
Most of the machines that you buy will work on the beach, on the dry sand. But the problem lies when you move on to the wet sand, you encounter what's called black sand mineralization. And you've also got the conductive element of the salt. A single frequency has problems with this. This is why most of the detectorists will use a multi-frequency machine to get through the mineralization and the conductivity, which the single frequency machines cannot really cope with.
Most of your finds will be items lost by modern holidaymakers, such as coins, jewellery and watches.
Today I'm using two machines. They're both from the same manufacturer's stable. One I'll be using on the dry sand. This is a single frequency machine. It also has the ability of having a notch control, which can notch out the ring pulls, pull tabs. But be aware, by notching out these, you will also run the risk of losing 50p's and 20p's. It is entirely up to you. Amount of ring pulls, do you accept them in the hope of finding, or do you get fed up with them very quickly? So then you'll notch them out.
And this is rather interesting beach coin that the wife found. Usually coins that come off the beach have got all pitter marks on them through gravel and wear and stone and actions. And this was trapped down a crack in a piece of mud. And it came out a beautiful George III half sovereign, mint condition. We were thinking it came from out of a ring or a piece of jewellery, but there were no evidence of any marks around the outside edge where it's been held in place. It just shows that anything can come off the beach, from cliff erosion. I don't think it's a loss off a ship or anything like that, but you never know. Anything can pop up these days on the beach.
For the wet sand, I'll be using a multi-frequency. As I've said before, this will now punch through the mineralised black sand and be able to cope with the conductive element of the salt a lot easier. This I'll be working in all metal, and I'll be checking the signals in discrimination. That's the two machines. As to the times when you need to be on the beach, obviously when you've got a lot of people on the beach after they've left, you don't really want to upset people by detecting in between them. Leave it till they've gone off the beach. Do it early evening or early morning. Get your tides right. There's no good coming down, you've travelled what, 15, 20 odd miles to come down to the beach, and the tide's high, you can't get on the beach. There's no point in that. The best times, it depends where the beach is.
One of the great attractions to the hobby is that once you have bought your detector, there is little else you need to buy. You might want to consider buying extra search heads for your machine.
Well, I'm first starting like on a field like this. You want ground coverage, you want to find out what's exactly on the field. So I'm going with the 11-inch coil. This is a real nice easy coil to use. It's wide scan, double D. If you look at the shape of it, you can see a D and a D. This is the windings of the coil. I'll do it that way through. Yeah? So you've got a D and a D. One transmits and one receives. You'll have a concentric, this is off of another machine. And you'll have the winding on the outside and the winding on the inside. It sends and it receives. Now the electromagnetic field, the pattern of it, is different from that one. This one is more concentrated on the centre. This one, as it says, wide scan, the pattern is wider, not as deep in the centre, but you've got a wider pattern of search. These are better for mineralised ground. These, on less mineralised ground, will actually go deeper, but the actual pattern is more concentrated. So you must be aware of overlapping your sweeps, especially with these. Now when we get on the field, I might find that that might have too heavily mineralised soil for the 11-inch to cope with, or there might be a lot of nails. So then I can also always go down to the 9-inch. Then if I get a real concentration of nails, I'll go down to this one, an elliptical. It's 10 inches by 5 inches. This will get in amongst the nails.
You will want to buy a decent tool for digging, and there are a few specialist manufacturers.
Well, Archie, it's very nice to meet you at long last. Excellent.
Hi, Howard. Yeah.
How long have you been actually manufacturing your digging products?
Well, we started manufacturing in 1989.
Really?
That
long?
Yeah.
Yeah, and sorry,
that's something like about 80,000 tools gone out.
Really?
Yeah.
80,000?
All around the world.
Good heavens.
From America down to Australia, China.
How many different products do you actually manufacture in your range?
Well, there's about 16 different types, but there's variations of each type. This is one.
Oh, I see that's in stainless steel, Archie.
This is stainless steel. This is called the Invader. And we make it longer for obvious reasons. You can actually
right on
Oh,
it,
yes.
like, you know, without bending. You've got the ripper edge there that actually collects the root. It won't, like an ordinary side, will slip off it like that.
Yes.
But that actually drags along it and cuts the root
Right.
of a root of a tree or whatever, and you can chop, you see. And the light, and you can put them in your pack, as reversed to a big shovel. It's heavy to carry, and it's harder to put in the ground. And at the end of the day, all you're fetching out is a coin, a small coin, because you don't need a great big shovel, you know.
No, that's right. So obviously a lot of thought and a lot of research has gone into your making
That's
it,
right,
yeah.
that's right.
And you make them in mild steel as well. I see that's a different shape.
This one's in mild steel. This is made for digging in small, confined spaces.
Right.
With a big shovel, you wouldn't be able to move. With this, you can actually pick and chip at the. That's called a Bigfoot.
Right.
We put the brace across for obviously for
So it's
more
not
strength.
not made for small people like me. No.
No.
All right.
Inside this tube, there's a bar that goes right the way down there.
I see.
To prevent it from bending.
Oh, that's a good idea. That is. Right,
yes.
Because they must exert a lot of pressure when you're digging things
Well,
out
it is, yeah.
and prizing things out of the ground.
We put it in not in these stainless because they are thick, but the black ones we put a bar right the way down that still stop it bending.
Metal detecting is a great hobby and is very addictive. You must remember though that as with everything, there are rules to abide to. The hobby is subject to several important laws, such as the Treasure Act.
It's important to mention that with metal detecting, that fines should be recorded. There's fines liaison officers now around the country. They should be utilised and used, and all the fines should be recorded. Myself as a dealer, I'm at the tail end. Most of the items I buy, if not all of them, have been recorded. If they haven't, I try and encourage the finders to record them. If they're an item of potentially of treasure, the finder's advised of that and puts it through the normal procedures, which is mentioned on this video.
While it's not necessary to have a signed agreement for anything that you find, it can be helpful if you do get a signed agreement with a landowner. There may be some disputes if something is found at a later date where the landowner may say, well, I can't remember giving him permission to be on this land, and therefore that would provide the proof that you did have permission from a particular landowner to be on that land. So yes, a landowner's agreement can easily be drawn up, and the National Council for Metal Detecting does supply a search agreement to its members, and so yes, it would be a good idea.
Yeah, it's been a year and a half it's been in use. That's the
It's all in stripes.
Well, what they used to do usually, that's their money, you see.
It's a Constantine, yeah, the Emperor. I don't know what do they call it? Silica, that's it, yeah. Of Constantine, yeah. 315, I think it is. Date.
Basketball there.
Yeah.
There's also a code of conduct to protect the reputation of the hobby.
When you come into the business, it's important to have a code because obviously in the past we've struggled with new people coming in, going onto land that they shouldn't, not getting permissions, and going onto crops that they shouldn't go onto. So obviously the FID, NCMD got together and created a code of conduct. Obviously the things that I mentioned are very important, and we want everybody, or every detectorist, to actually abide by these rules. It's one of my boring beefs about rallies, detectors in general, that they will not fill holes in. You know, and every time we see it, especially on a rally, we ask people to fill the holes in. They'll say, well, it's going to be ploughed in. And we say, what about the horse that's riding through the, on a Sunday morning with a little girl on top, falls into the hole, the little girl gets hurt, the horse gets hurt. It's your responsibility. You were the cause of it. Would you like to be the cause of that? No. Fill the hole. And it's something you've got to keep on all the time, because you're getting new people in all the time who are not used to doing it, who accept the thrill but won't accept the responsibilities.
It's a hobby which is rewarding. In fact, it's only one of the hobbies that is most rewarding. If you say monetary-wise, it is really rewarding. And you've only got to look at the stuff that is actually in a British Museum.
It is vital that our heritage is protected, and metal detectorists can help in many ways. Relationships between detectorists and archaeologists have improved over recent years, and now detectorists are responsible for the discovery of many important sites. Most museums have metal objects on display that were found by detectorists.
Got quite a wide range as any historic museum has. The main bulk of the collection is archaeology, so everything from the earliest human occupation about 300,000 years ago right up to the 1750s, 1800s. But we've also got collections of natural history, stuffed birds, birds' eggs, ethnographic material, arms and armour collection, so quite a diverse collection overall.
Don't be frightened to report your finds. You won't lose them, and you will be helping to preserve our history for everyone to enjoy.
The main contributions we have are through the Treasure Act. As Lincolnshire being a huge agricultural county, we do get a lot of treasure finds being declared, mostly by metal detectorists. But we do also see a lot of metal detecting finds coming in, and when nice finds are coming in, yes, we do certainly acquire from detector finds. We do get a huge number of treasure finds every year. They're items that have to be reported legally. We have a special case in the museum devoted to treasure finds, showing our latest purchase, which is what this little pendant is here. It's unusual. It's a 7th century Anglo-Saxon pendant, gold and garnet, but it's been made using a 5th century garnet inlay reused in the 7th century. And this little fish scale decoration that you can see in it is very rare. It's only the 3rd example that we know of in Europe. So we have some amazing finds coming up through the treasure process that the museum is delighted to be able to show to the public. It's very important that the objects end up in museums. It's easy for people to think that the glass cases they see when they visit museum is all the museum's about, when in reality there are many tens of thousands of objects behind the scenes that are just as important. The main museum's job isn't just to show things to people, it's to preserve them for the future, for future generations. So the material is preserved when it's in a museum. It's a simple fact. This is a fantastically rare find. This is the material associated with the burial of an Anglo-Saxon travelling metal worker. We don't have a skeleton, unfortunately. The soils that preserve the material remain so well, unfortunately dissolve the bones, but it's the only one we have in England at the moment of the complete burial goods of all his tools and his equipment with him. So we've got things such as little travelling anvils, hammers, potentially even early soldering iron that he had with him when he was moving around, and then all of his scrap material. He seems to have been a bit of a hoarder. All these bits of bronze and glass he's kept with him, presumably just so that they might come in handy one day. He's hung on to them. And a fantastic little item, a little bell. There was an Anglo-Saxon law that said if you strayed off the main path when you're a stranger in an area, you could be killed as a thief, a murderer, whatever. So you had to make your presence known. So we have this fantastic image of this travelling smith, wandering around Lincolnshire, not knowing where he was, and ringing his bell frantically to make sure nobody stuck an arrow in him for being up to no good. So it's a fantastically human story that we've got from the grave. The Portable Antiquities Scheme has been running since 1997, which is a voluntary scheme for finders of all archaeological material, not just metal detectorists, but obviously metal detecting finds make up a huge percentage of what's happening, and it basically exists to record the finds that would otherwise go unnoticed, and it's rapidly changing the picture we have of archaeology. Many finds that aren't being recorded by the Treasure Scheme might not be seen by museums, are being put onto a public database, and it really is radically altering the picture of archaeology, especially in Lincolnshire. Roman villas and temple sites have been discovered that we just never had any knowledge of their existence before.
I think it's very important to work alongside the fine liaison officers and the local museum and conservation people at the museum. You are only custodians of what you find. This is for our future generation. Instead of seeing them in the books, you can see them in the glass cases. Work with them, they're doing a fantastic job. They have now built the bridges between archaeology and metal detecting. It's been a big battle, and now we're slowly making grounds and working together.
The Portable Antiquities Scheme was set up to record archaeological finds found by members of the public. Now we'll record most things up to about 300 years ago, so that's sort of our cut-off point, is around about 1700 AD. Each county has its own finds liaison officer who's primarily responsible to go out and look at the finds which people are making in that relevant county. We do actually record finds from other people's counties as well. For instance, some detectorists like to go to other counties to detect, and we'll quite happily record those finds too. If you found something which you think is rather interesting, then do bring it into your finds liaison officer. Normally, if you've already dug it up, we can have a look at it there. If it's still in situ, we'll be more than happy to go out and have a look at it and assess it and see if it needs any conservation and so on. But yeah, please do bring your finds into us. Every find that comes out of the soil has the ability to tell us something new about the past. So we're quite keen to make sure that every find is recorded in a systematic way so that we can use that data to research the finds. Finds that come into us will be written up and photographed and stored long term. We record all the finds onto our database, which is at finds.org.uk. All of that data will then be passed on to the historic environment records so that it's preserved for long term, and it's incorporated with other types of evidence such as aerial photographs and field walking records, excavations and so on. We've had quite a few really important new sites come through. Some sites we already know about, and detectorists have just brought more evidence into the scheme, which is brilliant. But some sites, near Sleaford in particular, have been absolutely fantastic. They've brought new evidence to light and telling us new things which we never knew before. I would say that most of our records do come from people who found objects by metal detecting, although quite a number do come from gardeners and builders and so on. So metal detecting is really making a huge difference to our understanding of the past.
The National Council always recommends that people inform the finds liaison officer of their finds, although it's not compulsory. We do recommend that they do report their finds and work with their local FLO so that a picture can be built up, whenever they are detecting, of what is actually being found on that land.
Scheduled monuments are monuments which are of national importance, and as such they're protected by law. So you're not allowed to metal detect on them unless you have a licence. Normally you'll be able to see on the ground where the scheduled monument is. Sometimes it's fenced off and sometimes it has notices, but it's not always the case, so do be careful. Sometimes it's just a grass field. So the best thing to do is to contact your local Historic Environment Records office, and they'll be able to tell you whether it's protected or not. It's important that these sites are not interfered with because, as I say, they're of national importance. And so if people remove evidence from them, that's less we've got to understand about the site.
There has been some fear by detect users that reporting their finds would lead to that site being scheduled, and therefore they would be then prohibited from going on that site. This is not the case. Casual losses, which are what metal detectorists find, do not provide the criteria for scheduling a site. To schedule a site, the site must have archaeological remains below the surface, and the scatter of coins or artifacts on the surface does not in itself provide enough evidence to schedule a site.
You can't have people going along digging holes willy-nilly. I said, something like this, if you didn't have it scheduled, you would have so many people from all over the country digging holes in this. Even more important are sites such as Anglo-Saxon burials. Archaeologist's job is very important.
There's a great social life to metal detecting, and you will find other detectorists a friendly crowd. A great way to make new friends and increase your enjoyment of the hobby is to join a club. There are hundreds of clubs all over the country. Meet new people, talk about your finds, enjoy days out and share your experiences. Meetings may include a raffle, a find of the month competition and guest speakers.
Second, Richard Bainbridge is Edward second, London, and third.
The advantage of joining a club for me are to, basically it's a social thing for me personally, as regards digs, that sort of thing. I think generally you have to find your own land, or you join somebody. Can I mention other people, you know, Central Searchers, Weekend Wanderers, those sort of clubs where you can go further afield, but I have a few fields of my own, but obviously not.
I've been involved with the National Council since about 1990. I became Assistant General Secretary in 1994 and then General Secretary in 1996. The National Council for Metal Detecting is a representative body of elected volunteers formed in 1981 to provide a means whereby responsible metal detector users would have a democratic forum to discuss problems affecting the hobby and to provide an authoritative voice to counter ill-informed and frequently misleading criticism of the hobby itself. Anyone coming into the hobby of metal detecting, I would always recommend that they join a club. If they don't continue to attend that club, then first of all it will give them an insight into the hobby. It will give them the chance to speak to other members, to other people who go out detecting, see what types of machines they are using, see where they're going, see how they gain permission, to learn about the law relating to metal detecting, and it's a great mine of information within a club that anyone new to the hobby can learn. The National Council does have a website. The website address is ncmd.co.uk. On there you will find a list of clubs by region for those who are looking for a club to join. It will give you information on the Treasure Act, which all detectorists need to know about. It will give you a host of information about the laws in Scotland, which is different to those in England. It will give you a list of coroners throughout the country where you need to report items of treasure. And it will give you links to the DCMS website where you can see finds that have been reported by responsible metal detector users. It'll also give you a membership form which you can download, and it'll give you the National Council's Code of Conduct, which all metal detectors should abide by.
Most importantly, you're in an organisation that's responsible. You can keep up to date with the laws and regulations, but also, as I say, it gives you the liability as well. You know, when you're metal detecting, you have got that backup there if anything goes wrong.
The advantage of being a member of a club is that you meet other people who are into the same hobby, and you can also take finds, show finds to each other, experience the same weekends together, share fields that you get permission on. There's lots of different advantages that, you know, people sit round a group and just discuss general finds.
You'll never be short of friends if you're into metal detecting. Pick up a copy of any metal detecting magazine and you will find an up-to-date list of all the rallies that take place all over the country. These rallies are huge gatherings of like-minded individuals who spend all weekend detecting on prime sites, often on land that would otherwise be inaccessible. As well as any natural finds you might have, you stand the chance of winning prizes, meeting others and often meeting a representative from the Finds Liaison Office who will help identify your finds. There's a great family atmosphere at the rallies, and they're great for kids too. Take the caravan or tent and make a weekend of it. Many rallies are organised to raise funds for charities, such as the Catherine Parr Rally in August 2006.
This is our 7th rally, and we started them when a friend of my family took a child on holiday to South Africa, and she went into a cafeteria and there'd been a bomb planted by Al-Qaeda and it blew her legs off, and her parents, when they'd visited hospital with her over the years, realised there was very little National Health Service assistance for paraplegic children under 16 years of age, and we decided that we would raise money for the family. It got to such a level that we actually are paying for the NHS guidelines on children's amputations to be rewritten. The NHS won't pay for them, but their surgeons will be using them. Since we started the rallies, the metal detectorists from all over Europe, but mainly England, have raised £61,000 by paying to come to the rallies for the weekend, and also donating further on top of that with raffles. The rally we're doing now, we've gone through some terrible weather, but we estimate that there's somewhere in the region of 200 people here, and The worst weather we ever encountered was at Well in 2005, and we still had 250 people a day. I'm told by the amount of telephone calls that we get on Christmas Day that the atmosphere at the rallies is electric, and this year there's people pleading with us to change the names of the rallies, such as this is the Catherine Parr rally. People want everyone just to be advertised as the friendly rally.
People aren't out here for the value, the value of items. Very few, some are, there's obviously some will be, but the vast majority are out here for a fun day, picking up objects like this, spending time identifying them, cleaning them up and what have you. It's non-profit making this. What I mean is that if you were expecting to do this on the basis of a profit, you'd be out of pocket.
Yeah.
The biggest attraction to the rally is the people who are attending. We've discovered on the rallies two major hoards currently with the British Museum. We've seen pieces from Saxon, Viking, Roman, prehistoric, but the best thing anybody ever took from one of the rallies has been the memories.
Sort of one of the handles, it's needs cleaning, of course.
Yes, yeah.
That's a medieval mount, and that's a medieval book clasp.
It's just dipped in silver to make it look like a silver coin.
Oh, right.
But it's a copper coin. That'd be forgery.
Detecting wise, I don't think it's a detected, it's just like this now. Just a gathering. Yeah. The
Yeah.
gathering of the clan, so to
Yeah.
speak.
Yeah.
And we get to meet old friends maybe once a year type of thing, and we just reminisce, talk about the old times. The last rally we went on, we found nothing, and this rally we found nothing, but we all fetch a finds to show them what they found in between.
Finding this has made my weekend. If I found nothing else, I'm more than delighted with this.
I first started the rallies in 2001 when relationships with the archaeological world were fairly fragile, but since then, certainly in North Yorkshire where all our rallies are held, we have an excellent relationship with the Portable Antiquities Scheme. The two main members of it, Simon Holmes and Dave Evans, are 101% behind the hobby of metal detecting, and we are 101% behind the Portable Antiquities Scheme.
I think it's particularly important that we have FLOs at rallies because it's a fantastic opportunity to actually meet detectorists. So firstly, they've got a chance to record on the spot, and obviously everything that makes it easy to record makes people more likely to record. If you've got to get in your car and drive for half an hour to the local museum to meet the FLO, you're less likely to do it than if you've only got to stand in the queue for 5 minutes and meet them face to face. Secondly, it's really important here because we actually give people a chance to see how their one find adds up with all the other finds that people are making, to tell us more about the place that we're in. So for example, today here at Snape, if you found one Roman coin, you might think it's a chance find. In fact, we've got a number of people finding Roman coins. For anyone who thought that Snape, it's a medieval castle, there's nothing here before the Middle Ages. In fact, we've got proof that there is Roman activity. Maybe more interestingly, we're finding a number of Anglo-Saxon and Viking objects here. Again, one object doesn't mean anything on its own. The fact that 3 or 4 people have found something means that everyone here gets a chance to see that their one find, when put together with everyone else's one find, actually tells us a lot about our past. Gives us the full story, not just the story of one find, the story of a place. The process that we're using here at the rally, although it's broken down into different people doing different jobs, is pretty much what we always do with it. We're looking at the object, we're identifying what it is, taking a description, taking some detailed measurements, how long it is, how heavy it is, we're taking a photograph of it, and then we're also making a record of exactly where it was found, using a map and National Grid references, and the finder's personal details if they're willing to do that, and when we get back to the office, we'll record all that on the national database that, to a certain extent, anyone has access to. You don't get the detailed find spot, but if you were at the Snape rally, you wanted to put Snape into the database, you could see everything that had been found at Snape, including your things, although your name won't appear. You'd see what you found, what everyone else found.
Well, it's just like a get together, and you meet other people from different areas and see what they've been finding. Just having a good time.
I found this protobell today in the rally. It's quite deep, about 12 inches down. That's the best find I've found on this rally so far. And I've travelled all the way down from Scotland, and it's the first one I've ever found.
What a wonderful way to spend the weekend in the fresh air, getting lots of exercise, and if you take the caravan, it's home from home. You can still even have your Sunday roast. It won't be long before you're finding all manner of things, and some of them could be of considerable value. When you get home and start to clean your finds, you can do more damage to your metal objects in 5 minutes than the plough can do in 500 years. The first thing you should do is to wash the finds gently in warm water. Use a soft toothbrush to remove any mud. This way you can identify the object before you do anything else.
Whatever you find, the first thing you should do, particularly if it's corroded, or just wash it under a tap with just soap and water, perhaps a very soft toothbrush just to get dirt out the crevices so you can identify the shape of the item. But beyond that, do no further cleaning until you know exactly what you found.
This is an Anglo-Saxon brooch. It's made of copper alloy, which can sometimes be very unstable. But on the back of it is the remains of iron. Now this is the remains of the pin, which would have gone straight the way down here to secure it to the clothing. Now sometimes within this corrosion you'll find bits of textile or impressions of textile from the clothing. And of course, if you used a toothbrush and water to clean that, you could potentially damage this area, and we could lose information about what sort of things people wore.
There are cleaning aids on the market such as tumblers and chemicals. These should be used carefully and never used on valuable or delicate objects. Never polish your coins and other finds. If you are in doubt about how to clean something, ask your local museum for advice first. Your collection of finds will grow at an alarming rate, and you will get a lot of satisfaction by showing them off. You can mount finds in picture frames and hang them on the wall. Keep coins protected in special plastic trays, ring binders, or special coin pockets. You can have your own museum display in your own home.